All right, so let's do some logic for metaphysicians. 5 ways to connect with things. I'm going to share screen something right now. Hold on. It's a Word file because I'm going to be working on, obviously the tools on Big Blue Button are nowhere near what I need. Can everyone see? It should be a Word file. You should see a bunch of symbols on it and mostly white space. If you can see that, type in yes.
Are you?
Beautiful. All right. Can everyone also confirm if I'm selecting something right now? Let me just kind of, I'm going to type some. Actually, I'm going to just select something. Can everyone see my select tool? Should be blue. Type in yes if you can see that. Okay, perfect. Yeah. What's the color on your end? It's blue on my end. I just want to make sure that it's. Sometimes these things change. Blue as well. All right, terrific. Yeah, share screening. I'm not surprised. So I'll often use that. Terrific. All right, so we got 5 symbols here. It's going to be really easy. I want you to commit these symbols to memory. The book's going to have sometimes some slightly different symbols. Like one of the things you often get in terms of this, instead of this one is a horseshoe, and this one can look like a little square thing. But essentially, these are stand-ins for words that you're familiar with, and the words capture some logical connections. So I'm going to teach you what those words are. So for instance, this stands for the word and. You're all familiar with the word and. So instead of saying the word and, when we're going to be writing out this notation, we would put this. The technical term for this little chevron or arrow is called a conjunction. And so what we're doing is we have something on one side and something on the other side. So we'll say blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. You all do this in normal language. Well, the way that would be done in this case, right, is you'd have something on one side and you'd have the other thing on the other side there. And right in the middle, just like in language, you'd have this little symbol over here. That's and. This whole thing is called conjunction. Just get used to memorizing that little symbol. It's no big deal. And then you'll recognize it very easily. All right. So 1 down, 4 to go. Is that clear, everyone? Again, it's just a done memorization, kind of codified, a code. I'm teaching you a little code like we're playing a game. Right? We could go more into depth with the logical, there's more we can say about conjunction, but for this course, that's all you need to know. Cool. So Michael, Jaden, you said that was clear. I just want to take a quick reading. Is anyone spooked or terrified by seeing these symbols? And be honest, like if you have a fear of algebra and you see this, are you a little terrified? Sometimes most folks are. So I just want to know. Kind of cool. All right, that happens. It happens. And but yeah, we did some. If you've done some formal logic, you're less scared, right? Don't worry, I'm going to hold your hand, so don't be too confused. So kind of like one of the things that's cool about this is it's less to write out. Like if you look at this right now, and has 3 characters, right? A and D. That's 3 characters, whereas this little symbol has only 1. So imagine you were in a hurry, you want to type stuff out. It's much more compact because it only takes up 1 space. And as far as we're concerned, that's all we want out of these symbols is an economy of notation. Just to kind of cut to the chase. A little bit like when you say, you do this, right? We all know what this means when you're texting, right? That spares you a lot of letters instead of saying, by the way, right? Or, oh my God, this kind of stuff. It's the same exact thing. Only what we're going to do is we're going to use these little symbols and we'll agree on what they mean. And that's going to spare us from using bigger words. So that's it. Does that make it a little bit less scary? That's all we want. Yeah, that's all we want. Because it's going to get too long, right? And what we want is we just want to say things quickly and clearly. All right, so we have another symbol here. This one means or. It just means or. And you've known the word or. You've used it a lot. It means or in the inclusive sense of or. So what we mean is essentially, right, at least one of these 2 things. So at least one of these 2 things. So when we say, do you want some cream or sugar in your coffee? We mean you can have both cream and sugar in your coffee. It's perfectly fine for you to say, yes, I would like cream and sugar, right? But when I ask you, I say, do you want cream or sugar in your coffee? And you were to say, yes, I want both. I said, no, you can't have both. No. When we're going to be using this symbol here for or, what we mean is or in the inclusive sense, which means that you can have both options be the case. So yes, this can be the case. And yes, this other thing, whatever it is on the other side, can be the case. Right? There's the exclusive sense of or, right? In the following sense, like you could be, for instance, you can be pregnant and an architect, but you can't be pregnant or an architect, but you can't be pregnant or not pregnant. Like they can't be both, right? So there are certain things that are mutually exclusive. We're always going to use it in the inclusive sense. A little nuance that's not going to cause us a ton of trouble, but just something to be mindful. Instead of writing or, you write this, and by or we mean this or that, and both are fine. So essentially what this means is this or that, and both would be fine. That's all we mean, all right? And all of that captured by that little symbol. Is that clear, everyone? If that's clear, type in clear. If you got a question, ask your question. Yeah, and that's what we would call disjunction. Yeah, if you do logic, that's the technical name. Yeah, and we're not using it. That's right, Xander. Just to confirm, we're not using it in the exclusive sense. Were you to want to use it in the exclusive sense, you'd have to spell that out. You say this or that, and both would not be fine. You'd have to spell that out. So you'd have to use, we're going to have a little symbol for not. You'd have to use that, and you'd have to spell it out, right? So you can say something like, hi, everyone. I'm a teacher and a dad. That's true, right? And you're either a teacher. This is a true statement, right? I'm either a teacher or a cook. This is a true statement. I'm either a teacher or a cook. I could be both too. And I'm using or in a way that that allows me to be both. That would be perfectly fine, right? And if you want to say something like, you're either a teacher or a cook, I'm going to have to shrink the font here just a little bit so this all fits. Hold on. You're either a teacher or a cook, and you cannot be both, then you'd say something like this, teacher and cook. Let me just put this all on one line so that we can all see, just to show you a preview of the work that these symbols are going to do. Just this is a forecast now. This means not, right? This means I am either a teacher or a cook, and I can't be both a teacher and a cook. Like what's in these parentheses? I can't be that because this is not. And I've just now introduced you to one of our other symbols. So now another one that we've just learned, this just means, this just means not. So if you ever seen Borat, not Borat. There you go, not. That's what that means. So if you were to use the exclusive sense, Xander, you'd have to spell that out. You still do basically the same logical work, but you'd have to spell it out because by default, our or is going to be inclusive. And now we've just learned a little one right here, this little twiddly thing. Cool, Xander. I'm glad that made sense. Everyone, did that make sense? So here I'm a teacher and a dad, and here I'm saying I'm either a teacher or a cook, and I can't be both. If that makes sense, type in clear. If you've got a question, ask your question. And Amran, yeah, you can use both. It's just that you'll have a little more legwork to do if you want to do an exclusive or. You just have to spell it out a bit more. That's it. The line of symbols is going to be a little longer just to get there, to get that result. We could make a different symbol for it, right? We could say different kinds of symbols for inclusive and exclusive or, but that's it. And now, look, we did the, what did we do so far? Conjunction and disjunction, which is or. And now we're doing negation. Negation just means not. So whatever you put over here, you have a little squiggly line like this that we call the tilde. And in the book, it looks a little different. It looks like a square, kind of like a square. I don't know. How would you, an Allen key? Does anyone know what an Allen key is? I'm going to try to find a symbol for it. An Allen key. Yeah, it looks like an Allen key, right? Let me just find a symbol that they have in the book. You'll recognize it. There we go. It looks like this in the book. In the book, it looks like this. Same thing. That's not. I'm just going to use the little squiggly little tilde because I've got shortcut keys that I put on my my keyboard. And when I teach logic, I use the little squiggly one that looks like a little, I don't know, like a little pube or a little, I don't know, like a frown. Yeah. How do we type that? You can put the shortcut key. So it's you can grab the symbol from, and you'll see this in the homework. I'll give you a Word file that you can work on. And then what you do is you grab the little thing, unless someone has a shortcut that you can already do. It could be on your keyboard. Is it on the keyboard somewhere? I'm looking down right now. Let's call it the pube. Yeah, that would be funny. But then I chuckle every time. Below escape. Thank you. That's good advice. Let's have a look. Below escape. Yes, you're right. It's there. I've got a pube on my keyboard. I should clean that up. Thank you. Well, there you go. So you have one. Let me try to use it. How do you use it? You just type? No, you have to use, oh, you just caps lock or uppercase shift and, oh, cool. There you go. I'm doing it with this little thing. Yay, cool. Well, you learn something new every day. Hey, man, I teach logic for a living, and I didn't know that I had a little symbol for that connective, that little logical connection on my keyboard. So thank you for making me less ignorant. That's beautiful. So that's the idea, right? Not. And just kind of like, suppose I say not, and then I plug in whatever. It's like saying it is not the case that, and then whatever you plug in here. Right? So you're denying that. So it is not the case that, then you would say something like Bigfoot exists. Well, it is not the case that Bigfoot exists, right? So you'd be like, not Bigfoot, right? If B stands for Bigfoot exists, we're going to learn a better notation of this in a moment, but that's what it means. It means not. All right, so three down to go. So let me just repeat. So you just to start memorizing already. And, or, not. So far, so good, everyone. Type in clear if that's clear. Question if you got a question. So 3 down, 2 to go. Nothing too weird. Again, if you've done some logic, this is just going over stuff you've done already, little conventions, right? But that's all it is. And you'll get the hang of this super quickly. All right, next one up. Cool. Everyone's clear? How do you type disjunction? This is where eventually we'll have more symbols than you can do with a shortcut. So I'm sure there might be a way on the keyboard. So let me answer that one for you, Kai. In the homework I'll give you, you'll have the little symbols, and there's a way for you to set up shortcut keys. You can use a V. That's a great suggestion. But we want this to look a little bit like V because sometimes we'll use lowercase v for something else, and we want it to be distinguished from a lowercase v, right? So the best way to do it is when you're going to see my homework, grab them and insert them, make an automated shortcut key. So there's a way for doing it on Word. You can look at a YouTube tutorial. We'll teach you how. It's not that difficult, right? And I think I may have put some instructions on how to do that even in the homework. It's really not a problem. You make a shortcut key, right? So whichever you're comfortable with. So, but that's not something you need to worry about now. So let's not use precious minutes of our meeting time for that. Yeah. Cool. This all stuff you can sort out on your own. This here means, this arrow here, right? Going from left to right, it means if, plug in something, then, that's a really different size font here. If this, then that. Let me just put that all in the same font size so that it makes sense. Here you go. If this, then that, right? This whole thing is called a conditional, but you can call it an if-then statement. That's how we call it in ordinary English. You've all are familiar with that. That's just an if-then claim, right? So it is subjunctive mood. It's not actually saying that whatever you plug here is the case. It's saying if it's the case, right? So you might want to say if it is the case that such and such, right? And again, I'm going to try to put this smaller so that it all fits on one line. I feel like that's a little more intuitive. Then it is the case that this other thing. So if it is the case that whatever you plug on the left-hand side of the arrow, right? Then it is the case that whatever you plug in on the right-hand side of the arrow. And that's the logical work that this little arrow does. So you might say something like, if it is the case that, I don't know, aliens come, then it is the case that Patrick panics, right? Something like that. So like that would be an if-then statement. You're not saying, look at this, if it is the case that aliens, come, you're not saying that aliens are coming, by the way. Notice this sentence. It is not saying that aliens come, right? Or are coming. Let's just type it even more explicitly, right? No one who says this claim believes, well, let me just kind of zoom in. No one who says this claim believes that aliens are coming. They're saying if it is the case that aliens are coming, then you can expect this following consequence. That's going to be the case that what? That Patrick panics. So if it is the case that aliens are coming, then it is the case that Patrick panics. Or you might want to say, if aliens are coming, then Patrick panics. Right? And that's the work done by this one little symbol. It's called a conditional. We can call it an implication. I'm not going to bicker on terms. We're not that interested in logic, right? We are concerned with just skipping some steps. And so the moment I put that there and I've got something on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, I know that I'm binding it with a if-then statement. Is that clear, everyone, or do you have a question? If that's clear, type in clear. If you got a question, ask a question. And again, nothing to be scared of, right? Nothing. You all know how to say this in English, right? You all know how to reason with this kind of stuff. And then finally, the last one. Now this one goes both ways, right? This means, if you were to translate it in English, it means whatever's on that side, right, is equivalent to whatever's on that side. That's what that means, is equivalent to, right? And equivalent means if one is true, then the other has to be true. So for instance, if I say, I don't know, let's say Clark Kent, right, is equivalent to Superman, right? So I'd have to make a sentence. So I say, wait, Clark is in New York. Clark Kent. By the way, no spoilers here. We all know that Clark Kent is Superman, right? So if I say Clark Kent is in New York, is equivalent to Superman is in, what city is he in? If Clark Kent's in New York, where's Superman? You don't need a GPS for this one. You don't need a sort of airplane tracker. He's in New York. He's in New York as well. Why? Because Clark Kent and Superman are the same thing. So if one's true, the other has to be true. Can't have a situation where one is true and the other is false, right? And the whole point of, let's say, Lois Lane's ignorance is that she doesn't know that the two are equivalent. So she might find herself making false statements, right? Thinking that Clark Kent is in New York while Superman's in Tokyo. But in fact, Superman just went away and she doesn't know this equivalence. She doesn't know the equivalence. C is equivalent to S. She doesn't know that Clark is equivalent to Superman. That's a discovery for her, right? She would not know that that's a true statement. And we'll learn some, again, I'm just typing in letters here. We're going to refine that a little bit. So that's the work this does. Is equivalent to. That's all it says, is equivalent to. So whenever you're tempted to use something like is equivalent to, right, we would replace it with that. Is that clear, everyone? If that's clear, type in clear. If you got a question, ask your question. And it would be considered a biconditional. That's exactly right. That's the fancy term for it. Biconditional. Looks like a conditional, but goes both ways. If one is true, and then it goes both ways. Exactly, Jaden. Yeah. So the technical terms, if anyone's interested, let's go over the technical terms. This is a conjunction, a disjunction, a negation, a conditional, and a biconditional. Also nicely called an equivalence. In the textbook, I believe that the author uses a different symbol for this one, which looks like an equal sign with 3 lines. Am I correct that she uses this? Type in yes if I'm correct. Yeah, so just so you know, right, this is how she does that one. For this one, I believe she uses a horseshoe. Am I correct? And again, so you'll have to memorize a couple little symbols here, right? And then for this one, she uses this. So just so you know, the symbols over here, right? If I were to put them in color, so let me imagine I put them in red. These symbols in red, this is what the author uses in her textbook. What I've done, since I'm reworking the readings and since I'm making my own homework, is I use the symbols in black right now, right? But just so you know, if you were doing the prep chapter and you encountered this stuff, or if you're looking at the actual textbook and you encounter these, it's the same logical work that they do. It's a different convention, right? I just feel like this is a little more intuitive. My preference for the little pube tilde thing, there's no real reason for that. I feel like this is a very intuitive sign, a little bit better. Like it tells you it goes both ways. This tells you it only goes one way. There's a whole history behind these notations. We don't need to go in there. Is that clear, everyone? There's different notations in the book. Don't panic. Take a deep breath. It's no big deal. If that's clear, type in clear. Got a question, ask your question. It's nothing too crazy. And this kind of starts to look like a little face to me. This looks like I've got my facial detection module on. This looks like my white page is unimpressed right now. It's kind of doing a sideways glance a little bit. I'm kind of looking at me with its puckered mouth. Like this is the mouth. This is the nose and the eyes. Can anyone see that? Now you can't unsee it. Once you see it, face detect. It looks like an emoji. Yeah, face detection modules. Yeah. These are very powerful things for us humans to see faces. We see them everywhere. So I always like to have fun with that. All right. Okay. So we've learned something now. What have we learned? We've learned 5 ways to connect things. 1 down, lots of other stuff to go. Let's separate suchness from thisness. All right. How many words are in the box below? Type in the chat. I'm going to grab myself a bite to eat. Folks are written too, and there's true. If you do a word count, can you see the word count on my screen, by the way? At the bottom it says words. Can you see it on my word file at the bottom? When I select that, you should see at the bottom left. Yeah, so it's telling me there's two words. So you're correct. But we agree also that there's one word. What's the one word that shows up in here? It's the. So this is the tricky thing. This is where we're going to need a distinction, a metaphysical distinction, right? There's a sense in which there are two words in this box, right? But there's also a sense in which there's one word in this box. Kind of like if I said egg, right? And I said the, now there would be two words, right? And there's also two words. And if I said this, now there'd be two words, but in a sense, there's one word. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to track that distinction metaphysically, right? And this is what I mean by suchness and thisness. You have available to you as a human, maybe other animals and aliens are capable of doing this, but we certainly are. And it's unclear to me whether anybody else would, but it's a really important, let's say, pillar that allows us to be the intelligent creatures that we are. You're capable of grabbing things in their thisness. So there's this word and there's that word over here, right? Like imagine, for instance, you can imagine if I were to say, you shouldn't put the word the there. You just say, which one? Let's say I'm proofing you. I'm doing copy editing, and you're saying you really shouldn't put the word the in there. Which one, right? Is it this one on the left or that one on the right? Whenever we're handling them in their particularity, we're handling things in their thisness. You are this. I'm like, hey, I'm going out with someone. Who? This guy. And you can point to this, right? This guy right here. So you can have like, here's Paul, right? And here's another Paul. Who are you going out with? I'm going with this guy, right? Not that guy. And so we can point to particular things and conceive and approach them and cognize them and be interested in their thisness. But we can also be concerned with what runs across them, what is common to them. And that's when we're interested in their suchness. Like if you look here, the font's identical, the font size is identical. It's the same word in some sense, right? It's the same word. There's nothing different about it. And so if you consider it in its suchness, the correct answer, so one way of saying how many words are there below, well, it depends. If you're concerned with it in its suchness, there's one word. And if you're concerned with the word or the thing in its thisness, then there are two words, right? So you might want to say, considered in its suchness, there is one word, but considered in its thisness, there are two words. Suchness and thisness are words that I'm quasi-technical terms that I'm building off English. Latin terms would be quiddity and axiety. We don't need to go there, right? We have a metaphysical jargon for handling these things. And you might want to also say one word type, and you might want to say two word tokens. These are distinctions that someone who's a typographer or someone who's a philosopher of language is going to want to track. We'd say there's one word type, the, and it shows up here as two word tokens, the over here on the left, right, and over here on the left, right? So this is the distinction between suchness and thisness. So far as a first wash, is that clear, everyone, or do you have a question? If that's clear, type in clear. If you've got a question, ask your question. I'm going to do multiple washes. We're going to stick around with that distinction for a little while. And that's a great segue, Jaden. Does this apply only to words? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Let me give you an example. Look at this. Look at this box, right? There's a sense in which I think few of us care about eggs in their thisness, right? When I say, can you give me an egg? And you got a dozen eggs in front of you, you grab whichever egg. It makes no difference, right? Because you don't really care. You want the egg in its suchness. You're just concerned with an egg, not that egg, not this egg, right? But if you're, let's imagine these are fertilized eggs for a moment. If you're the parent of these fertilized eggs, these are individual children, right? All of them are the sorts of things to whom you'd like to call names. So you'd like to name this one. This is Sally. This is Patrick. This is Nigel. This is like I can name these folks after you folks, right? These eggs. If they were fertilized and you were the parent, it would matter a great deal if one got destroyed, which one got destroyed. Like if you drop an egg, you don't care because you handle eggs. You can only eat the eggs in their thisness. You can only eat particular eggs. You can't eat eggs in their suchness, right? But you don't really, you sort of only, you won't care if you drop one, which one dropped. But if you were a parent, you would care. Shane, put your hand down. If you have a question, you can just go ahead and type. You got a, I don't know if that's a legacy hand, but go ahead and type your question. Because it's hard for me to track the hand question, the hand raising stuff. We won't, I'd have to see down the whole list of folks. So folks, if you have a question, just go ahead and type in the chat. Don't use the hand raising function. You can go ahead and ask. So if you were the parent of these eggs and one of them got destroyed, you'd care, because you care about them in their thisness, not in their suchness. An egg's an egg's an egg's an egg. They've been all sorted to be identical in the same manner that the word the is identical to one another, more or less. Right? I'm sure if you zoom in, there's minute differences, but more or less in their suchness, they're the same. Shane, ask your question, and I'm curious to see what it is. But that's the distinction that generalizes over to more than words. Right? That was the initial question that Jaden asked. Does this apply only to words? No, it generalizes. It generalizes to eggs. It generalizes to anything. And in fact, by the end of today, I'm hoping you'll see the world and you'll, for each thing, be able to think, I can grab it in its thisness or suchness. Yeah. Shane says, my bad. I remember back in grade 7, we were told to care of an egg as if it was out of a human child. Yeah, because you want to handle it really carefully, right? Because you don't want to drop the egg. So that's one way of making sure a child doesn't drop the egg. Yeah. So look at this as well, right? Now that you know a little bit approximately how to grab things in their thisness or suchness, what is this picture grabbing the humans as? In their suchness or in their thisness? Yeah, Jaden will get to spend weeks and weeks on this stuff, so you can just put that on the shelf. Yeah. So when we do abstract entities, that's when we'll really do a deep dive in this stuff. So when we're looking at this picture right here, is this a picture depicting suchness or thisness? You got it, suchness, right? Just humans, kind of like the dozen eggs. This is how, if aliens don't care about us the same way we don't care about fertilized eggs, this is how they would look at us, just a bunch of humans. But, you know, like there's this schmuck, looks like he's got a ponytail over here, right front and the right. Maybe that's someone's husband, right? In which case it matters greatly, and you want to grab that in its thisness. So this is a picture of humans in their suchness. What about your Moodle profile picture? What's that grabbing? Thisness or suchness? In your generality or individuality? Suchness or thisness? Yeah, your thisness. It matters. It matters a great deal to you that you are this person as opposed to that person, right? It's like, imagine I get someone says, I don't know, drop a student the course. I mean, I get the directive from on high. KPU says drop a student from the course. Well, you're all students. You all satisfied that description, right? But you care which students. A student, right? You would care greatly about which one it is. You would not look like this indifferentiated crowd, right? Which student? This student. Ultimately, if I have to drop a student, I'm dropping one student from the course, right? But I'd have to pick who. I still, if it's one and you're all alike in some sense, because you're all students in that regard, you're all alike, right? I'd have to pick one. So for each thing, you can grab them in their thisness and its suchness, right? Let me again pause for a second and ask if there's, actually, here's another little test. I forgot there was this one. If you're looking at this is a urinal, right? Does anyone know what this is, by the way? Historically? And what does that mean, Duchamp? What does that mean? Enlighten your colleagues. Michael, or anybody else that knows. It's an artwork. It's an artwork by an artist, a French artist named Marcel Duchamp. And this is, how much do you think this costs? This urinal. It's a urinal upside down, like it's just on the ground. How much do you think this costs? You want this one. More than it's worth. Agreed. Right? If you take art history, you learn about this, right? It's objet trouvé, a found object, right? You can go to Home Depot and you can get a urinal, I suppose. I don't know if they sell that at Home Depot. That looks like a public urinal, but you can certainly buy that. Maybe a urinal like this costs, I don't know, $100, right? This one's worth $1 million or more, whatever, right? Gigantic number. It matters that it's this one as opposed to another one. Like, it's not like, imagine a security guard at night works in a museum and is renovating an extension on their home, and just grabs it, like lifts the glass box around it and just grabs it. And then, oh, don't worry, I didn't steal it. I replaced it with an even better one because look at this one's damaged and there's some writing on it. And they go to Home Depot and they get another one. How would the museum people feel if you took it and replaced it with an identical one from Home Depot? How would the museum people feel? Mad. Why would they care? Why would they be mad? It's the same. Imagine, same model. You're like, it's the same model. Come on, what's wrong with you? They would be upset. That's the correct answer, right? But metaphysically, give me an answer that starts to use some of our metaphysical tools here. Not so much property. I mean, don't think like someone who does legal work. Think like a metaphysician, right? Let's see. It's a different business. Exactly, Chase. It's a different business, right? It's a different. I don't want this one. I want that one. Look, one of the things that happens when you're a parent is you're confronted with the absurdity of your kids fighting over identical objects. Like they're qualitatively identical in every respect, but they want this one as opposed to that one, right? Like imagine, for instance, if I say, grab me an egg, you don't stop and you don't puzzle over these eggs and to figure out which one you're going to take, because you just want an egg. An egg. You just want an egg. You don't care which, because you're grabbing it in its suchness. But you can imagine from a kid's standpoint, sometimes they're metaphysically, they're interested in the particularity of things and they grab them in their thisness. And my kids would puzzle over which egg to take sometimes, which is astounding to my mind because I'm used to treating that category of things in the world is perfectly fine to treat them as indistinct, right? Humans is a different thing. They need a Moodle profile, right? It matters which I'm going to drop from the course, right? Ethical treatment precisely rests on treating others in their thisness, not their suchness. I'll say that again, even though we're not doing ethics. Ethical treatment precisely presupposes that you, when handling other humans, right, primarily shift to the metaphysical. You sort of switch that switch and you flip that switch in your mind, and you grab someone in their thisness as an irrepeatable individual that's unique, which you are, right? This, by the way, is an absolutely word you've never seen before. Let me say that again. This is a word you've never seen before. Do you agree? Type in agree, and confused if you're confused. Until today, you never saw that word. Type in agree if you see that. Meditate on what I just said. Until today, you never saw that word before. Type in agree once that clicks. Confused if you're still confused. Yeah. You saw lots of these, right? But you never saw this the. Right? What about this one? How many grabbed in its thisness? How many of this is there in the world? One, only one. There's only, that's the one. That's the one. That's the only one, right? And so you have all, look, I want you to take a break now, and I want you to look around your whole room, wherever you are. Look at everything. You can look at the thing in terms of its thisness or its suchness. This is most apparent if you have a mass-produced good. So that's a great place to start. Eventually, you can go beyond that. But it's also apparent for, let's say, squirrels. If you look out the window and you see a squirrel, you can just say it's a squirrel. But you can also, and if it was your pet, you'd care about it's this particular squirrel. Kind of like with cats. We don't just say, cat. If it's this cat, when you go to the pet store, you care which cat you're going to pick. There's cats. So mom said I can buy a cat. You don't go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You're going to try to pick a particular cat because you care about the cat in its thisness, not as just its suchness. And this distinction generalizes across everything, not just words. Is that clear, everyone? If that's clear, type in clear. If you've got a question, ask your question. We're going to practice this because that's going to be good for our logic. Like we're going to use this in our logical system. Cool. All right. And this is a distinction that the more you practice it, the easier it is to kind of like a zoom in a camera, like, close up, far away, right? You can kind of adjust. All right. So every time you make a claim, every time you say a proposition, something that's liable of being true or false, it turns out that you're putting a thisness and a suchness together. So every time you make a claim, like my cat Coco is stuffed, you have an unrepeatable part and a repeatable part, and they're conjoined together, right? And unrepeatable and repeatable is a nice way of understanding thisness and suchness. What's unrepeatable, thisness or suchness? Yeah, that you got it. That's unrepeatable. So thisness, that's unrepeatable, right? It's unique. Repeatable then by that same token would be, right, the suchness, right? So thisness, that's unrepeatable. Suchness is perfectly repeatable. It turns out that whenever you make a claim, like my cat Coco is soft, you have an unrepeatable part and a repeatable part. In this, my cat Coco is soft, my cat Coco is the unrepeatable part. So I'm going to color code it as purple. That's the unrepeatable part. My cat Coco is soft. That's the repeatable part. What else can be soft? In the chat, let me know. What else can be soft? A blanket, pillow, bed, hair, fruit, a soft toy, even music in its own weird way, right? Yeah, lots of things. So is soft, that's perfectly repeatable. My cat Coco is my cat Coco. There's only one. Is soft can be found at different places. And what we want to do is we want to start training ourselves whenever we see a sentence like my cat is Coco, I put it all in black. We want to be able to partition the parts that are unrepeatable and the parts that are repeatable. Let's do some more practice, right? Let's try on this. Ingrid is Mark's student. What's the unrepeatable part? Ingrid. It's not Ingrid. You can't reproduce. You can be named Ingrid, right? That's repeatable, like is named Ingrid. Like imagine if I said is named Ingrid. I'll put quotation marks around it because now we're mentioning the word, right? If suppose this was the claim. Ingrid is named Ingrid. Being named Ingrid, is that repeatable or unrepeatable? Being named Ingrid. That's totally repeatable. You could, lots of folks are called Ingrid. And even if they weren't, they could be. Like if I go around and I kill everyone who's called Ingrid, someone else could still be called Ingrid, named Ingrid. That's not a problem. You can name something Ingrid. It's perfectly repeatable. Different Ingrids, it's perfectly fine, right? And so in that case, we put this in orange, right? But going back to my original thing, being Mark's student, is that repeatable or unrepeatable? Is Mark's student, being Mark's student, is that repeatable? Totally repeatable. In fact, I've got 23 students in this class. They're all my students, is Mark's students. Hundreds of people are my student. And so I would put this, let's say, in orange just to color code it, right? Does this make sense, everyone? If that's clear, type in clear. If you've got a question, ask your question. We're going to practice a little bit more, but I just want to check in with you. If you're lost, you let me know. I'm totally lost, prof. I don't understand, but it should be pretty ordinary. What if Mark's is Ingrid's dad and the homeschool? All right, let's not go. What about this one? London is not a city. Tell me the repeatable part. What's the repeatable part? You gotta be a little more precise than that. So not just city, is not a city. Yeah. Lots of things are not a city. What's something else that's not a city? ... is not a city. What else could we put? England is not a city. My bowl of pickles is not a city. A cloud is not a city. Canada, and you're all staying in the category of geographical places, but Mark is not a city. Exactly. Mark is not a city. A bowl of pickles is not a jar of pickles is not a city. A fart is not a city. None of these things are cities. My dog is not a city. Exactly. What's the particular thing? There's only one. That one you can't duplicate. London. You got it. That's the unrepeatable part. Beautiful. Let's practice a bit more. Jane got married last Saturday. What's the unrepeatable part? Jane. Getting married last Saturday. Can other people besides Jane get married last Saturday? Yes or no? Yeah, totally other people can get married last Saturday. Sorry. Only Jane can be Jane, But a lot of people can get married last Saturday. You see that distinction, everyone? Only Jane can be Jane, that Jane, you know, that in her thisness. But lots of people can get married last Saturday. What about this one? Our family lives in a White House. What's the unrepeatable part? Yep, our family. Living in a White House, completely repeatable. Lots of folks can live in a White House, right? Not a problem. Lots of things can live in a White House. What about this one? Our house is the last one on the right. What's the unrepeatable part? Our house. And being in the last one on the right, look, you got a bunch of beer cans, and I want you to grab the last one on the right, right? Is the last one on the right? That's something that a lot of things can be. Maybe if you're standing on a police lineup, you're the last one on the right. You know, lots of things can be the last one on the right. That's totally repeatable. Being the last thing on the right, that's not a problem. All right, let's do another one. The Civil War was caused by many factors. What's the unrepeatable part? Civil War. You got it. Being caused by many factors, that's totally repeatable. Lots of things can be caused by many factors. You know, cancer can be caused by many factors. The weather can be caused by many factors, and so on. Again, repetition's good. Totally unprepared was I. What's the unrepeatable part? Sorry to speak like Yoda, but we're going to mix things up. I. Yep, I. I'm unrepeatable. Sorry, you can't be me. It can only be you. Right? Being totally unprepared, that's totally repeatable. Right? That lots of folks can be totally unprepared. I can be unprepared on multiple occasions. Right? Doesn't have to happen just one time. So totally unprepared was I. So notice here that the positioning in the sentence and the proposition itself doesn't necessarily track the distinction between repeatable and unrepeatable. It is a little more intuitive if we start with the unrepeatable part, but it doesn't always go that way. The Milky Way galaxy is immense. What's the unrepeatable part? The Milky Way galaxy. Yeah. That's right. That's a unique galaxy. It's this one. There's lots of galaxies out there. Being immense, lots of things can be immense. Your neighbor can be immense. The stadium can be immense, and so on. Michael writes, does a predicate need to actually be repeatable to be repeatable to, you mean like repeated to be repeatable? Yeah, just potential repeatability, right? So let's imagine, for instance, right? Let's say I say this. So Michael's got a great question. Jack Reaper, is that Reacher? Reaper to some, like, let's say, is 12 feet tall. Let's put all in black. We're going to have some fun in this. All right. Let's imagine being 12 feet tall. Is that repeatable or unrepeatable? Okay. And the unrepeatable part is this person, right? Now, let's go back to the question that Michael asked. First of all, let's just ask ourselves, is this a true or false statement? It's blatantly false because nothing, no human is 12 feet tall, but someone could be, and certainly other things are 12 feet tall, right? If I can say the flagpole, right, this flagpole is 12 feet tall, that would be perfectly fine. Is 12 feet tall is a perfectly repeatable predicate. This is what Michael was asking, even if it can sometimes find itself in a sentence such that it can be false, or it can be the only one. Let's imagine, maybe let's just say Jack Reacher is the only one who's 12 feet tall. Still, the distinction would track: purple on this side, orange on that side. The unrepeatable and the repeatable part. Michael, does that answer your question? We can make that logical distinction, and it just doesn't really care about that particular thing. Cool. Let's do a few more. Down the chimney came Santa. What's the unrepeatable part? Santa. Going down the chimney, lots of things can come down the chimney. Lots of things can come down the chimney. That's totally, what was my convention here? Oh, purple for the thisness, sorry. Purple over here and orange, yeah, I inverse the color. That's because I was on a separate page, right? because I put myself a jack reacher. I don't even know what that is, by the way. I think that's a thing somewhere. All right. Mr. Keith Richards is on my left. Again, here, what's that? Mr. Keith Richards is the unrepeatable, the one, the only, Mr. Keith Richards. But again, being on the left, right, just like being the last one on the right, that's totally something that is repeatable. Sorry, you can't, you don't have a. So here's the thing that sucks, right? And this is welcome to Metaphysics and Adulthood 101. You're absolutely unique, right? So all of you are absolutely unique. So you are all unique. But list all of the things you are. There isn't a single thing I can say truthfully about you that's not repeatable. So let's say, I don't know. Let's say Mark is a father. Let me put all of this in black, right? Cool. Well, guess what? You can't be me, but you can be a father. I touched something and my thing went away. Can everyone hear me? Type in yes. I just touched a USB port and I just went boom. Cool. All right, let's keep going. So you can't be me, but you can be a father, right? You can't be me, but you can have hair, right? Mark owns a car. You can't be me, but you can own a car. Whatever I might think is distinctive of me, let's try to be distinctive, right? Mark was born on the 17th of April, 1976. Is that unique, being born on that date? I'm trying to get unique here. I'm trying to narrow down to something you can't take from me. That's not unique. There was other people can have been born. I'm not the only one who was born that day. Damn. Mark has two people. I'd like to be special. Is this unique to me or is it repeatable? Unique to me. Damn it. What could I possibly say that's just unique to me? Help me. I want to feel unique. Unique combination of all these characteristics, maybe. My own qualia, I don't know what that even means. Mark is Mark. Being Mark, that's not repeatable, right? Mark is Mark. Depends on what we mean by which Mark, right? It's that Mark, maybe that's unrepeatable, right? But Mark is Mark, maybe that's repeatable. Being Mark is totally a thing, right? But the point is, if you list everything about you, it's kind of hard to get something that's unique to you. So much of this stuff is repeatable. So it really doesn't just bear upon words, right? This distinction, the suchness that you have, having brothers, right? Okay, cool. So Mark has a brother. Lots of things have brothers. Yeah, right? And so it's a disturbing discovery to make, but everything that can be said about you truthfully, chances are we can say it about other things as well. The combination might be unique to you, kind of like a barcode. That might be if you string it all together, maybe. And we'll see this again next week when we discuss some other technical problems. But all of these things, being on someone's this left of something, coming down a chimney, being unprepared, having hair, being a father, right? All of these stuff. And the fingerprints, no, not really. I mean, you could make a duplicate of that too, right? Like imagine if you make a wax duplicate of my fingerprints, you've still got the fingerprints, right? You could still do that. The design itself is not mine. I can't own that design. Like it's not like it's forever. Like maybe I'm the only token of it with that design, and no one's found an interest in duplicating it. But the type itself, once it's ripped off a token, you can rip it off. You can rip it off. Let me pause everyone. Is the unrepeatable, repeatable distinction, is that clear? Or you have a question? If it's clear, type in clear. If you got a question, ask your question. And whatever's the ish on a clear ish, that's because we'll spend weeks and weeks doing metaphysics, dwelling in that ish, because we'll have a week on this subject, which will be abstract entities. So your curiosity that opens up the ish, chances are when we dwell some time on this, it'll be really satisfying that curiosity. Because there's some interesting questions in the vicinity, right? Yeah, cool. Yeah, cloning, right? All right, so here's the thing. We're going to have notation for this stuff. So a moment ago, I told you at the very beginning, we had some symbols. So let's remember our symbols, right? Just for reminding ourselves, we had and, hello, and. We had or. We had this. What does that mean? Not the fancy name, but the normal English name. What does this mean? If then, that's right. What does this mean in English? This one. Or, you got it. We had this one over here. What's that? If and only if. That's the fancy way of saying it. Equivalent. Not so much equal, but equivalent. Yeah. Equivalent is because, again, we'll get into this nitpicking later. Equal tracks identity, and equivalence tracks truth values of propositions. So again, we'll have all sorts of chances if we want to dwell on this stuff. And finally, we're missing one more, our little friendly pube. This one. What does that mean? It means not. Yeah, negation, exactly. All right, so we know this. Now I'm going to add some more notation. Uppercase letter, that's going to be the repeatable. So remember a moment ago, we were tracking unrepeatable and repeatable. So unrepeatable and repeatable. Whatever is unrepeatable, we'll put in uppercase, and whatever's repeatable, we'll put in uppercase, and whatever's unrepeatable, we'll put in lowercase right after. So for instance, my cat Coco is soft, right? You'd say my cat Coco, that's the unrepeatable part. So that'd be C. Let me put this all in black right now. And being soft, so is soft, that's totally repeatable. So you'd write S, capital S, lowercase c. This means my cat Coco is soft. And instead of writing this, which is, if you look at the word count, that's 5 words, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 characters. We trade that for 2. Yeah. So repeatable comes first and is in capital. Unrepeatable comes after in lowercase. So repeatable first and in uppercase. Unrepeatable after in lowercase. So without using colors in the chat, what would we say about Ingrid is Mark's students if we agree that being Mark's student is going to be captured by M and being Ingrid is going to be captured by I? What would we say? You got it. You got it. Right? M-I. M-I. Exactly. London is not a city. Try it in the chat. And again, if you make mistakes, no big deal. Get comfortable trying because your homework's going to have you make you do it a lot. London is a city. Being a city is a repeatable part. London, so just a lowercase l. Even if London has an uppercase L, when we transform it into logical notation, lowercase. Yeah. Jane got married last Saturday. Type that in our logical notation. If we agree, I've underlined the letters. Zoom in so that's even clearer. Jane got married last Saturday. That's how we would write that. Let me pause. We've done 4, right? No, there's only one. There's only, don't make this more complicated than being married last Saturday is a perfectly fine one-place predicate. Yeah. All right, let me pause here. Is that clear, everyone? If that's clear, type in clear. If you got a question, ask a question. What we're doing here, the kind of repeatable part first and in uppercase, unrepeatable part right after and in lowercase. Cool. Let's try this one. Some family lives in a White House. F. Some family lives in a White House. Living in a White House. Got it. Living in a White House. That's perfectly repeatable. What lives in a White House? Some family. Our house is the last one on the right. Using H and L. Our house is the last one on the right. Michael, you're 2 ahead of everyone. We don't even have symbols for any of this stuff yet. Our house is the last one on the right. Last one on the right, what? Our house. You got it. You got it. The Civil War was caused by many factors, using W and F. The Civil War was caused by many factors. You got it. Uppercase, Jaden. Uppercase with F. Yeah. Good stuff. Let me pause here. Is someone lost or is everything clear? If that's clear, type, or clarifying, like it's on its way to sinking in. If you're lost, type in lost. So clear or lost. Only two possibilities. I want to hear back from everyone. Because it doesn't have to be perfectly clear. Practice is what makes it clear, right? And I need to hear it from you if you're lost, right? The colors help? Cool. Yeah, and you could, at the beginning, you could color code this stuff, right? But eventually we'll let go of those training wheels. I like the colors too. Totally unprepared was I. Let's do that. With you and I. Totally unprepared was I. That's right. Y'all done some math. You've seen this kind of stuff, right? F of X, right? You've done this, right? This is where this notation is kind of drawing inspiration from. A repeatable function, and you plug in a particular thing in there. That's the idea. Just so you know, this is in the direction it's going. The Milky Way galaxy is immense. Using M and I. Capital I, lowercase m. And I've heard from Michael, Kelly, and Jaden. I know for a fact that two of those three or three have done logic. So I need to hear back from everyone. And I want, actually, you know what? Michael, Kelly, and Jaden, I'd like you to not type because you look like you got a handle on this. And I want to see in the chat folks who haven't sort of, I'm so scroll up and see. I want to hear from folks who it takes a little longer. So I don't want you to type just yet. When I say type, press the enter button, then you can put it in. So let's give everyone at least like a minute to do it, right? Down the chimney came Santa using C and S. Don't type it, but don't press the enter button just yet. When I say go, then you can put it. So using C and S, down the chimney came Santa. Lots of things can come down the chimney. We have a particular thing in this case, Santa. Give ourselves some time to think that through. All right, press. Beautiful, my friends. Terrific, terrific. Lots of things can come down the chimney, and in this case, this particular thing said, Mr. Keith Richards is on my left. Being on the left, L, Keith Richards, K. Take your time, don't press enter. See when people are done typing. Press. And look at that, we're all converging on the correct answer. Terrific. Baby steps into this. I guarantee you it's going to get much harder, but baby steps into this, and baby steps that I hope are not scary. So far, how's the scariness level on a scale of 1 to 10? Papa Bear is taking it slowly, giving you lots of love, and taking it gradually. How's the scariness factor? 10 being you're absolutely terrified, 1 being like you got no problem. Nice. Okay, good. Good, good, good. So baby steps into this. We're gradually ramping up. Cool. That's not bad. Anything under a 5, I'm happy with. And the rest dissipates with practice, right? Because you're going to be doing this a lot, a lot, a lot. All right. So that's the separating suchness and thisness. We're going to see this again. We're not done with this just yet. So now, when we were doing the thisness, these were particular things. We're going to subdivide these into two kinds. The particulars we care about and the particulars we don't care about, right? So there's two sorts of unrepeatables that we're going to track with our logical notation. And in one instance, you might be interested in some specific individual. So an individual we care which, an individual we care which. So for instance, Mark, that's an individual and I care ardently who it is. Excalibur, that's a sword, but not just any sword. It's a particular sword. It's a King Arthur's sword. My sword, let's say I own a sword. That's a sword I care about. And we typically, in this logical notation and in ordinary life, we can name the particular things. So notice Excalibur is a sword, and we can name things. We tend to name people, but you can name things. We name boats, by the way, right? The Starship Enterprise or things like that. We name inanimate objects. You could go back, and if you cared a lot, you know, and if you were strange, and you could totally do this, you could name your dozen eggs, right? You could say this one's called this one, this, and I remember earlier I was naming them, fertilized or unfertilized. You could decide to name them, fertilized or unfertilized. Well, you can do that with anything, right? You can name a particular because you care which one it is. So we're going to have two sorts of particulars. The ones where we have a specific individual and we care which it is, in which case we'll use the letters A, B, C, M, and so on, right, to name them. And then sometimes it can be an individual, but you don't care which. Kind of like when I was asking you for the egg. One egg, so I just want one particular individual, but I don't care which. It could be some random individual, right? So an individual, we care not which. And thus we'll use X, Y, and Z for those. So some person or a sword or this, right? So unlike my sword, I care about that one. Some person or a sword, these are things that we don't really care which. They're still individual. We're grabbing them in their thisness. But there's the thisness we care which, and the thisness we care not which, right? So in specific individual, we care which, and some random individual, we care not which. That's the sub-distinction we're going to make. So first distinction we made was between the particulars and the general. This is general, this is particular. And then we subdivide the particular into the things we care which, the things we don't care which. Let's do some practice, right? If we're going to say that something is soft, we haven't specified what sort of thing is soft. We know that it's particular, right? So particular things are soft, right? So I would say something like this. Being soft, that's the uppercase letter that shows up at the beginning. And then I would say X. Something is soft. What? A particular thing, but I don't really care which. Remember earlier we named a bunch of stuff that was soft, right? Well, it's the same thing. A particular, we care not which. Or something is Mark's student. For sure, something is Mark's student. So we'd say M, X. Something is Mark's student, right? But which one? Don't know, don't care. Something is a city. CX. CX. What would we put? Something got married last Saturday. If M stands for being married last Saturday, what would we put? Type that in the chat. MX. You got it. MX. Something. Something I care not which. Something I care not which got married last Saturday. Something lives in a White House using H. HX. You got it. Something is the last one on the right using L. Right. Something was caused by many factors. X. Something was caused by many factors. Totally unprepared was something. What would we do? We use U for being totally unprepared. X. Something was totally unprepared. Something is immense. Capital I-X. You got it. And notice here, this is a particular thing, but we just don't care which, right? A particular thing, we don't care which. And this is important because when we make this distinction, we're able to track some logical moves that are fine and some that aren't fine. Suppose I say Dilpreet, and that's a particular we care which, right? Dilpreet's a particular thing, and we care which one. It's Dilpreet. What did Dilpreet do? There's lots of things we can say about Dilpreet. We can say that Dilpreet took the bagel. Dilpreet took the bagel. We can infer that therefore something X took the bagel. So we can go from Dilpreet took the bagel. So that would be taking the bagel, let's say, is B. Let's just give it a letter. Lots of things can take the bagel. B, who took the bagel? Dilpreet. All right. So we can say that, and we can go, therefore, what can we say therefore? That BX, something took the bagel. This is a perfectly logical inference. You can go from Dilpreet took the bagel, therefore something took the bagel. That's a move you can do. But you can't do this. So this move is perfectly fine. I'll put it in green. You cannot do this. I'll put this in red because this is something you can't do. You cannot infer from something took the bagel to Dilpreet took the bagel. That doesn't work. This movement in this direction doesn't work. You cannot say, for instance, right, I know that something took the bagel, Therefore, Iskarke, and then you charge Dilpreet specifically. It was Dilpreet who took the bagel. That move you can't do. Clearly, if the bagel vanished, then something must have taken it, but you can't infer from that that it was Dilpreet. Let me pause and you can meditate on this for a second. Is that clear, everyone? If that's clear, type in clear. If you have a question, ask your question. Little basic logic. It's a one-way street. Exactly. It's a one-way street. Yeah. And that's fun because we want to be able to track. Man, remember, the whole point of what we're learning today is to be able to do the sort of metaphysics we were doing last week, but to do it in a manner that's more delicate, right? And no, actually, Blue, that's a different fallacy than affirming the consequent. You'll learn what the fallacy is. So these are fallacies involving quantifiers. So it's not the sort of thing you get in propositional logic. So just as an aside for folks. So Blue, it's not quite the same. Yeah. Yeah, and again, we haven't gotten to any of the stuff. Some folks who are keen on discussing this and know some of the more notation are bringing it up. Let's just stick to what I've talked about since I said hello at 1 p.m. So if I haven't mentioned the word quantifier, we don't know what that is. We can't mention it, right? So it's not like this jargon. You're bringing it from somewhere else. Obviously, I know it because I probably teach you in my class elsewhere. But as far as this class is concerned, whatever we discussed is fair game. The rest stuff, just don't. Let's not muddy the waters right now because my goal as an educator is to make it clear. And remember, people, we have some people who are scared, right? And so the goal is let's keep that conversation slow and gradual so that everyone's on board. Actually, I want to check in with everyone. We checked again if the frightening stuff was clear. I just want to check the fun factor now. This is outside. Is this fun? Are you having fun? Because we still want to have fun. Remember, I still want to have fun. How's the fun going? How are you feeling? This has to feel fun. We don't get paid enough to not have fun. Yeah, we're having fun. Cool. All right. Because I think this is fun. Like if you do this gradually and in a way that's not scary, it's nice to see that we can actually do some work with this stuff. All right. So what have we done? 5 ways to connect things. We had and, or, if, then is equivalent to, and not. Separating suchness and thisness. You can grab something in its generality that's repeatable, or you can grab something in its particularity and it's unrepeatable. Well, the unrepeatable particular things, well, sometimes we can subdivide them in the sort we care about, the sort we don't care about. The sort we care about, we name them. The sort we don't care about, we don't name them. So in the case of Dilpreet, right, D, we give him a name. Dilpreet, we care about. X, something, we don't care, we don't bother with the name. So A, B, C, D, and so on are names. X, Y, Z, things we don't care about, right? And if you were to say, by the way, if you were to say X, that's something, and what's Y? What's something else? Just another thing you don't care about. Just that's not X, right? Another thing you don't care about. All right, so we're now learning about two quantities, and we're going to learn why. So this is where quantifiers come in. The logic I'm gradually teaching you, and it's really just with a big, really heavy and significant metaphysical spin. I'm not teaching this like I would in a logic class. I'm teaching it, actually maybe would teach it in a logic class this way because I feel like it's the best way to teach it. It's really pregnant with a lot of philosophical and metaphysical baggage. It's asking to do metaphysical work the way I'm teaching it. We're going to be using this logic called first order predicate logic, or sometimes called quantifier logic. And we're going to be handling two quantities, and I'll tell you which one those are. There's two quantities. It's really straightforward. We're actually going to we're going to say there's at least one, in which case we're going to use this symbol. Always say for all, so all of things. So these are only two quantities we're going to be interested in. Everything, right? At least one thing. That is it. Nothing in between is going to matter to us. So like, let's say you do stats, right? And you say you juggle percentages and you say, 57% of Canadians think that such and such, or, 28% of squirrels that hibernate in winter, blah, blah, blah. We don't really care about anything beneath more than 0, which is what I've got selected right now. It's not 0, something other than 0, or everything like 100%. And why those two quantities? Well, it's really easy. If you have something that's more than 0, like it's not 0, it's 0.001, and it exists, it shows up on our metaphysical radar. Like, how many Bigfoots have to exist on the globe for Bigfoot to exist? How many specific specimen, how many individual Bigfoot animals, tokens, must there be for the claim Bigfoot exists to be true? How many must I produce in front of you, in front of journalists? How many must I put on a slab for me to confirm the existence of Bigfoot? At least one. One will do, right? If there were more than zero, exactly. The moment you got it, Mandy. The more it's more than zero, then the damn thing exists. So suppose I say, for instance, right, Bigfoot exists. Well, we know what sort of claim this is. It's a metaphysical claim, right? Bigfoot exists. How many specific individual specimens of Bigfoot must I produce? At least one. So I'll be interested in this particular quantifier. There is at least one X. That's it. Then I'm on the radar. I have to be now part of the list of things that exist in the world. And we'll also be interested in for all X. That's also a very interesting metaphysical quantifier, right? For all X, and these are symbols that you can also grab and automate on your computer if you want. Sometimes you have them as, we don't have them on shortcut keys, but you have them as insert symbol and so on. You'll get them from my homework. You can rip them off and then you can add them as shortcut keys. This means for all X, right? And this is also interesting because it ranges over everything. You can think of the universe as a whole, right? Sometimes, like, you can gesticulate a lot. And I'm talking about, like, imagine if I say, everything, right? If I say something like, God is everything. What do you mean by that? Everything. You mean this? Yeah. And this? Yeah. And that? Yeah. And then you wave your hand about and say, everything, right? You mean you're sweeping. And when you wave your hand and you sweep about in the air, you would also intend to pick out distant galaxies. Like, as far as things go, that's everything. All of it. Right? And we're going to be interested in that as well, because that's a very interesting kind of claim when you say for all X. And these are the two quantities that we're going to be using. So in addition to tracking now, when we had our sentences, they were in English, they were in black, we first order of business is we break them into the repeatable and the unrepeatable. Then we look at the unrepeatable. We ask ourselves, is it the sort of thing we care which, or the sort of thing we care not which? So we're going to use a name or a variable like X, Y, Z. And then we're going to also think about quantities. How many of these are we talking about? At least one or all of them? And these are the only two quantities we're going to track. And that's going to be the bare ingredients of our logic. Let's go see what that looks like now. Something is soft. We said a moment ago that we want to say something like being soft. That's the repeatable part. I put it in black, in uppercase, and X, right? Something. And if I say something is soft, I'm actually saying, if you were to unpack this, there exists something that is soft. Can anyone see that this sentence does justice to the original one? Like, if I were to formulate it like that, essentially when I say normal English, something is soft, what I mean to say is that there exists something that is soft. Can everyone agree on that? Type in agree if you agree. That this more wordy formulation captures the thought. There exists something that is soft. Good. Same idea. If I want to be even more explicit, what we mean when we say there exists something that is soft, what we mean is there exists at least what? There exists at least one thing. There exists at least one thing that is soft. Right? So let me put this underneath here. Oh, I don't want my paragraph break here. When I say, right, something is soft, what I'm saying is what we have here above. There exists at least one thing that is soft. And if I'm saying there exists at least one thing that is soft, which of these two quantifiers am I going to use? The one above or the one below? Above. Exactly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this in black again. And so now what I've done is I have a sentence here. It's making a claim. There exists at least one thing that is soft, and I've symbolized it. That is, I've transformed it into our symbols. And when I'm going to read this, I'm going to say there exists at least one X such that this X is soft. Let me zoom in. This is how you read this. There exists at least one X. What's X? A particular we care not which. There's at least one of those, such that we can say truthfully about this one X that it is soft. So you read it like the bouncing ball is, you start here, here, then here, then here. There exists at least one X such that this X is soft. And this would be the sort of nerdy paraphrase of something is soft, would be something like, there exists at least one X. Let me put all of this in black, right? Something is soft. Let me put that in bold. I'm paraphrasing that as, there exists at least one X such that this X is soft. And this is what we're learning to translate things. Like, this is very colloquial, something soft. That's something you say at the bus stop or while talking with your friends. And in this classroom, what we're going to do is we're going to transform that into, there exists at least one thing we care not which, such that this thing we care not which is soft. And then we're going to further distill this down so that we're saying this. So this is the transition I want you to do. I want you to move from this to this to this. And ultimately, the finished product is what I'm going to be interested at. And you also want to be able to move backwards. Eventually, once you're going to be adept at this stuff, and we know what this S stands for, once we've agreed that being soft, S has to stand for something, we have to agree on what it stands for, you can read it backwards. And you can figure out that this is saying something is soft. This is a preview of the skill you'll be practicing all week and for the remainder of today and for the rest of the week and the week after that, and we'll use this. All right? Is that getting clear, everyone? Okay, now we've got all our ingredients. We're starting to see them come together. If that's clear or clarifying, type in that. And if you got a question, ask your question. We're on our way. We're not done yet. Remember, we still have 45 minutes to go, but we're nearing. We've got all our ingredients now. They're starting to come together. The recipe's coming together. Would I be jumping? Yeah, you'd be jumping ahead with any stuff about the domain of quantification. Yeah. In this class, so quick answer is the domain's everything. We don't subdivide domains. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I'm entering Elon Musk's brain. Yeah. Kyla, that's a really, I like that. Like, maybe he's on a spectrum and he thinks this way, right? This is an engineer's way of thinking. You can see that, right? This is the logical person's way of thinking. Most of us operate here. But we're going to train you to operate on these other levels, which are more precise. They're a little artificial sounding. They do sound Elon Muskish a little bit, but they're more precise, right? Cool. Let's go for this one. Something is Mark's student. I'll hold your hand again for this one. Something is Mark's student. So we said a moment ago, right, that something is Mark's student. What should I put here right before this? What should I type here? X is Mark's student. I'm going to put this in black. Yeah, that existential quantifier, it's called, right? Over here. Yeah. There exists an X, there at least one X, such that this X is Mark's student. There's at least one thing. I'll say it again. Hold on. And again, I'll color code it because I remember someone said that was helpful. That was Kelly. All right, being Mark's student, something I care not which, something I care not which, and at least one. So let me say that again slowly. There exists at least one thing I care not which, such that this thing I care not which is something. I haven't named it. I don't know specifically where it is, but it's out there. It's out there in the universe. Well, I can say this about it, namely that it's Mark's student. Can everyone see that? Type in yes if you can see that. No, if you can. Like, it's nice when I kind of select and paraphrase. I feel like that snaps in, like with the color coding too, right? There's at least one. And you know, the moment I put this little sign here, it's called an existential quantifier because it has to exist now, right? You can't say there's at least one and then deny its existence. If there's at least one, then you can't deny its existence, right? If I say there is at least one Kraken, I don't know if that's how you spell Kraken, the big giant octopus of the sea, right? I can infer from that, therefore, right, the Kraken exists. The Kraken exists. Like from the at least one, you get the existence that comes along with it. Ipso facto, therefore, just on its own, To have at least one means that it shows up on the list of ingredients in the universe, right? The list of things that exists in the universe. Let's do some more practice. Let me zoom out here. You don't have all of the tools. It's a rum as well. That's cool. All right. You don't have all of the notation, but you can use a regular capital E. Something is a city. Try that in the chat. You got it. Good. Good. There exists at least one thing I care not which, such that this thing I care not which is a city. All right. We're going to do the same thing as a moment ago. Don't type until I say press. Type, but don't press until I say press. Something got married last Saturday. Type it out when I say press, you can press. You got it. You got it. And so what you would say essentially in English is, there is at least one thing I care not which. I mean, you can, and I care not which is really to emphasize that you're going to use a variable X as opposed to something specific, right? If you were to say something like, Mark got married last Saturday, we'll see in a moment that would be different. But we're not saying Mark, we're saying something, right? Just something. And clearly you and I, knowing what marriages are, it would have to be someone, but just at this point, just something got married last Saturday, which is still true. Something is more broad than someone. There's at least one thing I care not which, such that this thing got married last Saturday. Let me just zoom out. I want to be able to essentially say this in weird sounding, more explicit language that then splits apart the unrepeatable, the repeatable, tracks whether it's a particular we care which, and then tracks the quantity. These are the ingredients, right? We want to say what's repeatable and what's not repeatable, right? What's repeatable and what's not repeatable, right? Versus what's not repeatable. That's the first thing, right? We also want to say care or versus not care, right? And this applies only to one side of this, right? Care versus not care. Which of these two distinctions, repeatable versus unrepeatable, which is the care versus not care which? What does that apply to? What does that subdivision apply to? The unrepeatable or the repeatable? Yeah, the unrepeatables, right? Sometimes, look, if someone knocked over, like let's say someone knocks over Stonehenge, well, something knocked over Stonehenge, but even if you can't find it, it's out there, right? You can't name it, but it's out there. Something knocked over Stonehenge, so something must have knocked over Stonehenge. You don't care which, right? That's very different from saying, you know, Bruce Banner or Hulk knocked over Stonehenge, then you care which one it is. And then you also want to say some versus all. So those are the two quantities. So what we have is the distinction between subject and predicate. This is the technical terms for these things. That's what we track when we have the repeatable versus unrepeatable. Care versus not care. Well, that's the distinction between a name and a variable. And some versus all, that's the quantifier or the quantity. Let's just go for quantity here, right? Some versus all. So our logic essentially takes any claim and starts to really track, are we talk about the subject or we talk about the predicate? Are we talk about a name here or we talk about a variable? Are we talking about a quantity that's some or a quantity that's all? And we want to track these things. And all of that gets made explicit when you say something is a city, it's made explicit. This is the quantity. In this case, it's some. This is the subject predicate, right? Being a city, that's a repeatable predicate. What happens to be the subject? Well, something is a city, right? And we know that it's a variable because it's not a name. We don't care what. We're not saying London is a city. We're just saying something. So in this case, we don't care what satisfies the predicate being a city. And that all of that is packed into this. Is that helpful, everyone? Type in yes if it is, no if it isn't, or lost if you're lost. Got to check in with everyone because remember, I don't read your body language. And I have to say, this is as good as it gets, short of the practice, right? I can't do the practice for you. Yeah, so you'll take your time a bit in the homework to do that more carefully, but the feeling of being lost will kind of dissipate. That said, if you are lost, can you make that a little more precise for me? Do you think you can ask me specifically what your concern is or where you got lost. So what's the part that's not clear? Let's see if we can tighten that bolt before moving on. So Kyla, Amran, Mandeep, I'd love to hear from you. Just try to make that a little more precise. So if you're lost, what part did I lose you on? And then chances are other folks could use a little bit of tightening of that screw, and we'll screw it a little tighter. I'm happy to do that. We're doing great. I just want to make sure everyone's good. Do not care portion. Okay, cool. All right, Amran, that's it. Let's see what Mandeep and everybody else. Same. Okay, cool. All right. How about this? I'm gonna have some fun with this. Great question. Thank you for asking me. All right. I am angry. Get me something I can punch. What do I want you to bring me? An X? What is that? In plain English, what do I want you to bring me? I'm angry. Like imagine a king or something tells to his court, "Give me something I can punch." No, not boxing gloves. No kidding around. Look at what's on the screen right now. Be precise. Summon or punch. What to punch? Have I specified? Anything. Get me something, right? Anything I can punch. That's basically the request. I'm angry. Get me something, anything that I can punch. That's all I want. Something, anything that I can punch, right? It doesn't matter what it is, right? Likewise, if I say, "Oh, I am starving. Get me something to eat." And you come back with, I don't know, a hot dog. Did you answer my request? Yes or no? I'm starving. Get me something to eat. Did you answer my request if you come back with a hot dog? Yeah, you did. What if you bring me back a bao, a Chinese bao? Did you answer my request? Yes or no? I said, I'm starving. Get me something to eat. Something I care not which. Something I care not which. Or I care not what. Right? Something I care not what. To eat. I didn't say anything specific. That's exactly right. Exactly. If you give me a chocolate bar, you still answered my request because all I wanted was something that I can eat. I don't care what. Just get me something. Yeah, that's it. And so in that case, what would we use? Would we use the ABC or would we use XYZ? So Amran, what will we use? ABC or XYZ for the something I care not what? XYZ, you got it. XYZ. We'd use X, Y, or Z. X. There you go. All right. So give me something I care not what to eat and something else to drink. All right. Or say even better, something else to spit out of my mouth. Right. So I'm going to do contradictory things with it. Right. So I can bring you one thing and then I'll have to bring you something else because it clearly has to be something else that I'm going to be bringing you. And again, I'm asking you to get me something, right? And then I'm asking you to get me something else. So you get me something and then get me something else. You see that? Something I care not which, and another thing I care not which. And then we'd switch to Y. Does that make sense? I'm running everybody else. Was that helpful? Type in yes if it was. Further question if you have a further question. This is where we want to track that. How specific are we? Just waving our hands about something? Still particular. Yeah. Cool. Can I, by the way, can I eat a suchness? Have you ever eaten an egg, a general egg? Cracked a general egg, like a suchness egg, pure suchness? No problem, Andy. You can only eat particular things, right? But sometimes you care not what, right? Like sit on something. Sit on what? I don't know. Grab something. Just go grab something. Sit on it. Come over here. I have a story to tell you. Grab something. Yeah. And so the idea is that's where we'll have that distinction, right? Hold on. Here we are. Where were we? All right. So let's do some more practice. Remember, we're tracking repeatable versus unrepeatable. And now that I hope we've done another wash on it, the unrepeatables come in two varieties: the kinds we care about, the kinds we don't care. Because I could also have asked this, right? Get me I could have said, I am hungry, right? I could have said this. I am hungry. Get me a pizza from Apollo's. Specific, or a veggie pizza from Apollo's. That's very specific, right? Give me a veggie pizza from Apollo's, more specific than just give me something to eat, right? And again, Michael, put this domain stuff. The domain stuff it's just fine tuning. Talk about this office time stuff. Office time stuff. Yeah. Because remember, I have to adjust myself for the whole class. All right, cool. Let's practice something is immense with our quantifiers and everything we've learned so far. So let's start with the quantifier. What's my quantifier going to be? An existential quantifier or a universal quantifier? Am I talking about at least one thing, or am I talking about all things? At least one or all? At least one or all? Yeah, at least one. At least one what? At least one thing, I care not which. And what can I say about this thing? Give me in a chat with a capital letter. It's immense. It's immense. Certainly we can agree that this is a true sentence. Something is immense. What would it take for you to prove that it's true? Right? So we want to say this is a true claim. All right, fair enough. It's a true claim. How would you prove it? How much evidence do you require in order for this metaphysical claim to be true? Because it's a metaphysical claim. It's saying something about the universe and the way the world is. It's saying that something, at least one thing, is immense. I would need at least one. There you go. It's fairly straightforward. Now let's have a fun with our other quantifier. Let's have some fun. Everything is soft. Well, I would say this. I would say that for all things, those things are soft. For all things are soft. For all x's, those x's are soft. So grab me any x, that x will be soft. By the way, everything is soft. True or false claim? Is it true or false? It's a false claim, but we can make it precise using the logic. And notice why it's so easy to prove it false, right? That's not what I want to do. Hold on. The reason why it's so easy to show that it's false is because it ranges over everything. If something ranges over everything, how many counterexamples must I put forward of something that's not soft to prove that this sentence is false? One. I only need one thing that's not soft and you're done. Right? Because it's such a strong claim. It's ranging over what? Ranging over everything. So all I got to do is show you a piece of sandpaper. You're done. That's a false claim, right? It's a metaphysical claim. All the senses we have so far studied, they're all part of metaphysics. They're all descriptions of reality, local descriptions of reality, right? But they're nevertheless descriptions. Everything is soft. That's a metaphysical claim. Happens to be a false metaphysical claim. Let's have some more fun. Everything is a city. Let's do that one. Everything is a city. Do that on your own. And again, for the universal quantifier and existential quantifier, we can use A and E in uppercase. Everything is a city. How would you write that? For all things, that thing is a city. And again, this claim, whether it's in English or whether it's in logic, is it true or false? Everything is a city. It's true or false claim? False claim. But it's more precise. We're making it precise now, right? And now we can have some more fun. So I told you a moment ago, right? If I say at least one thing is a Sasquatch, right? I would say this. There exists at least one X. Why is this so ugly? Hold on. There exists at least one X such that this X is a Sasquatch. Being a Sasquatch, multiple things can be a Sasquatch. If there's a family of Sasquatches, all of those family members are Sasquatches. It's a repeatable. Is a Sasquatch? That's repeatable. And if I say at least one thing, that means there's at least one thing that satisfies that description, right? And again, we don't necessarily need to locate it in order to make the metaphysical claim. You don't need to go out into the woods and find it. We're not scientists, we're metaphysicians. And if you make this, you're making a metaphysical claim. At least one thing is a Sasquatch. All men are pigs. How would we do that? All men are pigs. This is going to be a little trickier with things that you don't know yet. But I'll give you a try on your own. You'll need tools that we haven't learned just yet. This is where we're going to have to learn some of those symbols that we learned at the beginning. Remember those 5 symbols? We're going to have to use them now, right? So here's the thing. When I say all men are pigs, right? I can't just say this. Here's what I can't do. I can't just say this. What does this say? What I've selected, what does strictly speaking, what does that say in English? If we understand that being a pig is P. What does this say? Strictly speaking, just read the logic and translate it back into English. What is that actually asserting? There's at least one pig, yeah. And what does this do? Everything is a pig. So let's have some fun with this. This means there is at least one pig. This sentence, true or false? There's at least one thing. Given what we know about the world, it's a true statement. Everything is a pig. True or false? False. And the earlier sentence we wanted to say is, all men are pigs. Now here's where things get interesting, right? Suppose you want to say all men are pigs. First of all, it's probably a metaphorical use of pigs. They're not actual pigs, not in that sense, right? So let's disregard that for just a moment. But being a man, ... is a man, that's repeatable, right? Being a pig, that's a repeatable. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to have somewhere in the mix, we're going to want to put the predicate M, right? The suchness M, and we're going to want to put P somewhere in there. We're going to have to track that in addition, because when you say all men are pigs, you're not saying everything is a pig, right? So you can't find yourself saying the following. You can't say this, because then you'd find yourself saying something way more strong than you actually intend to say. I don't know why it does this. Hold on, right? You don't want to say this, because that says everything is a pig. So you're going to need is a man somewhere in the mix. Now, you might want to make up notations. You're not quite sure how to do it, but I'll teach you how to do it. No, I'll teach you how to do it, right? And that's going to bring us to the Jedi problem and existential import. So this is my segue to that, right? Let's have some fun and find out how to do it. Let's ask ourselves this question just to prime our intuitions. All Jedis use the Force. True or false? Now, if you know anything about Star Wars lore, right, you know that this is true. All Jedis use the Force. Jedis are the mythical priest-like warriors of the Star Wars Empire. They use the Force, right? This is good old, I believe it's Kit Fisto, and he is currently using the Force, moving objects with his hand at a distance, right? It's true. But hold on. If you think that this is true, so let me underline that. Are you saying that Jedis exist? All of you who said true, do you believe in Jedi, yes or no? You believe in the Force? Yes or no? Like a bunch of people said true, but you don't believe in Jedis. And you don't believe in the Force, and neither do I. So we got ourselves a little bit of a problem here, right? Kind of like earlier when I said how many words are there, we both wanted to say there's one word in the box and 2 words in the box. Remember when we said the, and we kind of had to introduce a distinction, we had to do some logical work to make some sense and metaphysical work to track that distinction. On the one hand, I want to put myself in the position to say that the claim all Jedis use the Force is true. But I want to be able to do this without committing myself to the existence of both Jedis and the Force. And this is the problem of, that's the technical name, existential import. Like I want to be really careful about the things that I'm going to commit myself to as existing. And I want to be able to say that I can translate this into the logic that we know and love and we're learning without thereby committing myself to the existence. Now we have 2 quantifiers. One of them is called, remember, the universal quantifier. And what's this one called? This upside down E. Remember the name for that, the technical name? What was the name of that quantifier? We have two quantities, all and at least one. What's the name of the at least one? Existential quantifier. Existential quantifier. And this is called a universal quantifier. And these are great expressions because they're tracking quantities. Universal because it's dealing with all of the universe, all things. And existential because there exists is in there, right? There exists at least one. So what we want to do is we want to be able to talk about all Jedis, right? But we don't want to commit ourselves to the existence of the Jedi. So here's how we're going to do it. When we have all Jedis use the Force, this is where our little connectives from earlier are going to come in handy. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to say this, right? For all things, let me just give myself, put this in black and remove all the blur, the stuff. For all things, so now I'm sweeping my hand. If that thing happens to be a Jedi, then that thing happens to be the sort of thing that uses the Force. Now notice what I said earlier about if-then. If I have an if-then claim, do I commit myself to actually asserting the first part of the if? Say if-then. Remember, if aliens land, Patrick will panic? Remember that one? So I'm not actually committing myself to this. So what I'm saying is, look around in the entire universe. So this is what this is saying. That's the universal quantifier. Search the universe. Anything you'll find, if it happens to meet the description of being a Jedi, then it will also meet the description of being something that uses the Force. Now, what's cool about this is that it tells you that all Jedis use the Force without necessarily telling you that Jedis exist. Because if you find a Jedi that uses the Force, if you find something that is a Jedi, then you'll find something that uses the Force. But obviously, you're never going to find a Jedi because no such things exist. So you can take this and you can have it as a means of saying this sort of sentence without committing yourself implausibly to the existence of the things you're discussing. Search the universe. If you find something that fits this description, then that thing will also meet this other description. That's what that says. Actually, I'm going to write that out because I feel like that's a really helpful way of saying it, right? It's like search the whole universe. Which of these symbols, by the way, is capturing this? Search the whole universe. Of these symbols here, which is the one that tracks? Search the whole universe. Which one is the instruction to search the whole universe? Specifically this. Search the whole universe. I'm going to have fun with color coding here, right? So bear with me on this. Actually, I'm going to try to use different colors. Search the whole universe. And whatever you find, and this will be, let's say, no, let's pick another color. It's kind of weird brown. Whatever you find, I promise you that if it is a Jedi, how could we put this? Which color? If it is a Jedi, I'm going to put this color, right? If that thing you found is a Jedi, then it, and again, I'm going to put this, my color coding, what did I use earlier? This really ugly brown. There you go. Really ugly brown, really ugly brown. Then it will be a Force user. Let me just say it that way. It will be a Force user. Let me put this as another color. And again, I'm having fun with colors here. Force users over here. Okay. Search the whole universe. And whatever you find, X over here, right? So whatever, we don't care which. I promise you that thing, that if, and that's a big if. So we want to sort of put this in. And if that thing you found is a Jedi, well, that's the J, then it will be a Force user, and that's the F. I'm inventing color coding on the fly to try to make this pop. Is this helpful? If that's helpful, type in yes. If it isn't, type in no. If that confused you, type in no. If it helped you, type in yes. I just want to gauge, because as a prof, I never know. Make you shit up, right? I'm just like doing whatever to try to make it clear. Search the whole universe. Now watch out whenever you use this, handle with care. So I'm glad that helped. When you tell someone to search the whole universe, you better be careful what you say, right? Because remember earlier when we said everything is soft, that's easily shown wrong, right? If you say something like this, search the whole universe and everything you will find will be soft, that's such a bold and frankly untrue statement, right? But if you say something like this, let's imagine S stands for is soft, right? And let's imagine that S stands for is soft, and let's F mean feels good to the touch. Feels good to the touch. And let's put it all in black, let's say, right? I can say this. Look throughout the whole universe, and whatever you find, if that thing is soft, then that thing feels good to the touch. This sentence, true or false? True. It's true. And notice how now, is it, so let's be metaphysicians now. So this is a true claim now because it's more carefully worded. But the price to pay, though, is to say if something is soft. In a world where this claim is said, does this claim by itself paint out a world in which, in point of fact, things are soft? Does anything in this particular sentence let you infer that there exists something that matches that description? No. Nothing in here lets you infer that's actually there's something that's soft. It's saying if something is soft, then something will be good to the touch, feel good to the touch. Now let's imagine that's a premise. You've all done a bit of philosophy. You've all done your prep chapter. So let's imagine that's a premise. Let's give ourselves another premise now. There exists at least one thing, this is a cautious claim now, such that this thing is soft to the touch. Therefore, conclusion. What can I conclude? I can conclude that there exists, fill in the blank for me. For all things, if that thing is soft, then that thing feels good to the touch. And moreover, I'm telling you, there's at least one that's soft. Therefore, you can know that there's at least one thing that feels good to the touch. Look at that. Isn't that kind of neat? Tell me neat if you feel that's neat, even if you couldn't come up with it immediately. Can you start to begin to see what we can do with that? I think that's neat. I'm going to write neat because I feel like that's neat. Like I love teaching it because it's like rediscovering it. It's like watching a new movie, a movie I know with my kids, and then they're like watching it with fresh eyes. I feel like when I teach this to you, I feel like I'm rediscovering it. And if it's done well, then I myself am like, that's a really cool set of tricks, right? That's really cool, right? And what we want to do is we want to have this kind of logic. And so do you need the existential? Yeah, you'd need this. You absolutely would need this. Yeah. You cannot go. So again, remember when we said green is good, red is bad? This is perfectly legit. Remember when we talked about, well, who was stealing the bagel? You remember? We were doing stealing the bagel. We said you can't go the Dilpreet, good old lovable Dilpreet. Remember we did this a moment ago? We said Dilpreet took the bagel, therefore something took the bagel, that's fine. But we can't say something took the bagel, therefore Dilpreet took the bagel. Remember that? Type in yes if you remember that one. So we were able to track which inference we can and cannot do, right? That's logical versus actually technically valid versus invalid. Notice how I can't do this. So go back to what I just made up here about the stuff. All right, so this means, hold on. This is what these letters mean. Let me put this over here. F means ... is soft. S means ... is not. All right, here you go. So this is what these letters mean. So long as we agree that they mean this, I can't do the following. Imagine I say, for all things, if that thing happens to be soft, then you will also discover that it feels good to the touch. Therefore, conclusion, there exists something that is soft to the touch. That is wrong. It's fallacious. It's invalid. Can everyone see that? Type in yes if you can see that. I can't infer that conclusion from that premise. That's why it's in red. It's bad. That's a bad list. That's a bad inference. I can't infer the conclusion that there exists a thing that's soft. Also, I also cannot infer that something feels good to the touch. I can't do that. And that's why, swinging back to what Michael asked a moment ago, this premise is crucial. In the same manner that if you have if P then Q, you need that P to get to the Q, right? You need the antecedent to be affirmed in order to get to the consequent. It's the same damn thing. You need to do a little more work with quantifier logic to extract that out and to prove it, but that's the main idea. I think intuitively you can track that. And if I were to put it in normal English, you can understand what that means. If I say, right, if let's say, if how about this? If something, I can make another one in ordinary English so you can see it, right? If something can bench press 2,000 pounds, then it is strong. Right? Just so you know, 2,000, I believe, is way, way more than anything or anyone can ever do, right? And I can say something or someone, right? Something or someone, doesn't matter. Something benches 2,000 pounds. What's the conclusion that I can reach from this argument? If I say, if something can bench press 2,000 pounds, then it is strong. What can I conclude from this argument? Something is strong. Exactly. Clearly, I can conclude that something is strong. But I cannot do this. I cannot say if something can bench 2,000, then it is strong. I cannot go from that to something benches 2,000. Can everyone see why the red is red and the green is green? Type in clear if that's clear. Question if you got a question. Yeah, and Michael, we'd have to learn more than just the symbolization to get into the nitty-gritty of your question. So the symbolization wouldn't be enough. We need to learn inference rules. So we'd have to do a full logic course on that. But that's all I want is a symbolization. Yeah. Cool. All right. So that was the Jedi thing, which was one of our items on our list, right? Let me just now see. We remember Jedi and we remember Force. What does this sentence mean in English? Take a moment, type it in the chat, and then press enter when I say so. Don't press enter before that. Translate this back into English for me. Normal English or Robo-English, preferably even Robo-English or whatever you're comfortable with. Put this back in English. Artificial engineering sounding English or regular colloquial English. What is it? What is this saying? And that's going to be kind of cool because otherwise, if you haven't never taken this course, maybe at the beginning, this could have been frightening, but now it's going to mean something to you. What is this saying? If we agree that this is a Jedi and that F means uses the Force, which are both repeatable things, lots of characters can be Jedis, right? And lots of things can use the Force. And of course, whether or not these things exist, that all happens here. What does this mean in English? Wait, and when I say press, you can press. Let's just wait. Take your time. Write this out in English. And this is preparing you for the homework because you're going to be going from the English to the symbols. So if you're going to do it backwards, that means you're going to start to understand. Press everyone, and then we'll compare what folks have said. Jaden says, there exists at least one thing that is a Jedi or the Force. No, not the or. So Jaden, you want to fine tune that? That's the and. Michael says there's this next such that this X is a Jedi and he uses the Force. Yeah, Baron, you're good. Michael, that's good. Kyla says there exists a Jedi and Force. No, we really want to take a thing, right? The thing that is a Jedi and the thing that is a Force, not the Of course, the Jedi and the Force, once the thing is a Jedi and the thing is the Force, you really want to put the thing in there, Kyla. So fine tune that. Does that make sense, Kyla? And again, rough formulation. You're just learning this. It's okay, huh? I'm here. We're all here to learn. It's just like fine tune that. Just put the thing in there because we want to honor this X. Yeah, we've got an X, right? Garrett, I'm reading down. So Amran, there is something exists, then the Jedis exist and they use the Force. No, you don't want to say in the plural the Jedis exist, right? So Amran, you're talking about Jedis in the plural, and this is only saying at least one. You see that, Amran? Like you just want to say like, yeah, you just want to get that one particular, right? Garrett, let's have a look. At least one Jedi, such that at least one of them uses the Force. There's at least one Jedi, and that thing also uses the Force. It has to be the same thing. Yeah, it's not bad, Garrett. Close. Kelly, there exists at least one thing that is a Jedi and uses the Force. Kelly, you got it, right? Mandeep, you can see the if then's not there, right? So we have an and. You see that, Mandeep? So you want to switch to the and. Yeah, you got it. If and no if. So in your second formulation in the chat, if Jedi exists, this is really committing itself to the existence of Jedis now. So now, no problem. No apologies. We're all working on the space. Yeah. So what this is saying, strictly speaking, and this is the existential quantifier, so it's actually now committing itself to the existence of Jedis. So this is, if it's committing itself to the existence of Jedis, this is a true or false sentence. Let me put it in English first, then I'll ask you, right? There is at least one thing such that this thing, and it's one thing really we need not name, right? We care not which, we need not name. That's another way of saying, right? So there is at least one thing we need not name such that this thing is a Jedi and uses the Force. And that's an ontological commitment. Here we're saying that's really part of the layout of the universe, right? So if we were to take this sentence, which is now translated in English, is this a true or false? Yeah. And Amran, that's would there be a way to pluralize? Yeah, if you're using the universal quantifier, then that's essentially pluralizing it, right? Because you're ranging over everything. You see that, Amran? The different work done by the quantifiers will kind of do the logical work for you. Yeah. This is a false sentence, right? Cool. What would I need to produce in order to show that this claim is true? So prove it. So what would I need to put in front of you to prove that this claim is true? That there is at least one thing such that this thing is a Jedi and uses the Force. Suppose I say this. All right, here is a Jedi. I show you a Jedi. Have I proven this claim above? I show you a Jedi. Have I proven the claim? Yes or no? Dang, it didn't work. All right, here is a kid who uses the Force. Have I proven it? Yes or no? Why not? You're correct. Why not? Jaden, Kelly, Michael, you're correct. I haven't proven it yet. Why not? What do I need to do to prove this claim true? Yeah, I have to prove they're a Jedi as well. Both things have to, it's and. So I got to prove that here's a kid. All right, cool. So I have to show you someone, right? It doesn't have to be a kid because we don't care what, right? He uses the Force and is a Jedi, then I'd show this true. And of course, you know I'm never going to find that, right? So this claim is false. And this is sort of doing metaphysics slowly with sort of the painstaking work, right? If you were to state that out, I'd state the conditions for me showing it true or false. And that's a kind of a to-do note for scientists. We'll go out and here's a work order. Go check whether in the universe, right, there's you can find at least one kid who uses the Force and, right, is a Jedi. So that's for scientists to figure out. We philosophers can just sit here, clarify the logic, and give them a work order, and then go scour the universe to find at least one. If they find at least one, then this existential claim that there is or there exists, and that's our verb, right? That's our class. Then we got it. My friends, we're learning logic and we're doing metaphysics. Can you start to see it come together? Can you start to see it come together? This is what we're doing. This is what we're going to be doing. Look, you're going to have homework, right? The homework is going to look a little bit like this. So let me show you the logic practice that we can do together. That's going to show you a little bit what the logic looks like. So let me share screen this with you, right? This is what it's going to look like, roughly speaking. You'll have a sentence in English. So over here, it's Tobias is bored. You're going to have to figure out what's the repeatable and unrepeatable part. In this case, what's the repeatable part and what's the unrepeatable? Well, what's the unrepeatable part? Tobias. Do we care which one it is, or do we not care? Care or not care? And we have to subdivide the unrepeatable into care or not care. We care. We care enough. Care enough to call it what? What are we going to call it? Type it in the chat. What are we going to call Tobias? Going to call him XYZ or a specific letter? I'm going to call him T. Lowercase t. Lowercase, please. Lowercase t, because he's an unrepeatable. So we're going to call him a unrepeatable T. And what are we going to say about good old T? So I've just put T in here. What are we going to say about good old specific we care which T? What about him? Bored. Got it. He's bored. And then your answer would be here. Your answer would be here. So what you're going to do in the homework, you say London Bridge is falling down. That's a particular we care which. We're going to call it lowercase l. And we say, what about it? It's falling down. And you're going to do this. And we're going to work our way up the ladder of complexity, right, as part of your homework, starting with baby exercises like this and ending with stuff that's a little more involved. Say something like, if Amrit is safe, then everything is fine. And then we'd end up something like this, right? If Amrit, this particular we care which, is safe, then for all things, those things are going to be fine. And that's what you're going to practice. And you know what's going to happen along the way? You're going to screw up. And you're going to make mistakes, and it's going to be okay. When you make mistakes, you look at the solutions and you try again. You try to understand why the answers are what they are. And that's going to be your homework. You have lots to do for that.